the president of the Institute of Cultural Diplomacy Academy, Institute of Cultural Diplomacy Academy vice presidents, Institute of Cultural Diplomacy Advisory Board members, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for bestowing on me the honor to deliver the keynote address on this momentous occasion. It gives me great pleasure to stand in front of you to share my thoughts about the theme of this conference titled A World Without Walls, Opportunities for Peace Building in a Time of Global Insecurity. This year's conference is very important because it comes at a time when the German people and the world at large mark the 25th anniversary of the fall of the Berlin Wall. Throughout history to modern times, walls have been necessary for most cities, states, and nations. Walls have served the purpose of border controls, regulations of trade, and control of migration and immigration. Walls have, however, also been symbols of oppression, suppression, estrangement, and suppression of human rights, human fundamental rights, most especially the right to freedom, free movement of people and their property. The Berlin Wall, which is one of the modern-day walls, was a tangible symbol of the suppression of human rights during the Cold War era, before its fall in 1989. The fall of the Berlin Wall was a historic catalyst that brought change in the world's political, economic, and cultural landscape. Today, with the tearing down of walls, the world is increasingly globalized, and with globalization, physical walls that existed seem to have fallen. As human beings, we now live in a global village. In the current setting, it has become easier for people to communicate and link up with each other in the shortest time possible. Thanks to the power of the internet and improved means of transportation and communication. However, while physical walls seem to have fallen, many political, economic, and cultural walls still exist in today's world. I will briefly dwell on the walls that exist in our societies today. Political walls still exist in the world today, both in physical and intangible form. 25 years after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a total of almost 27 political walls have been erected. The walls are built by both dictatorship and democracies. The barriers are justified in the language of security as protecting countries from terrorists, drug cartels, insurgents, and illegal immigrants. In fact, some citizens of the world are still constrained by the presence of physical walls. The Palestinians in Gaza are constrained by the existence of physical walls. In my view, I think that some countries have taken the political walls too far in the name of national security. At the abstract level, intangible political walls still exist in our society. This is evidenced by the political divide that has come as a result of rampant political intolerance to other people's views. In some parts of the world, political leaders and elites have created walls around themselves to the exclusion of the majority poor and helpless population. Brutal suppression of political dissent is the order of the day in these countries. At the economic level, the world is still barricaded by economic walls evidenced by the haves and have-not, the rich and the poor. The world's economy seems to be dominated by the very rich countries. That make it difficult for the poor countries to participate in the global economy through excessive protectionist policies. In my view, in my country, Uganda, it is easier to import from the United States and China than it is to export to these two countries due to inability to produce enough to export to these countries. Hence, the poor countries seem to become poorer and the rich countries have grown richer as a result of these economic wars. And this inability of exporting creates imbalance in the trade between the two countries, the poor and the rich. Culturally, there seems to be a lot of cultural intolerance. This is evidenced by the rampant isolations and segregation of people because of their religion, race, skin color, gender, and sexual orientations. This has resulted into discrimination and segregation. This situation has made the world a terrible place for some people to live in. It is my belief that the tearing down of the political, economic, and cultural walls that exist in the world today can make the world a better place for all of us to live in without compromising peaceful coexistence. Some examples of prominent walls in the world today are the 3-mile wall in Baghdad, built purposely to end sectarian violence, is perceived by some sections of Iraqi citizens as a move to isolate the Sunni population of the city. Number 2, the 120 miles wall between Iraq and Kuwait that was built to check incursions from Iraq. 3, 559 miles wall between Saudi Arabia and Iraq that was constructed to stop militants from crossing into Iraq, and prevent refugees and smugglers from accessing Saudi Arabia. Number 4, the 330-mile wall between India and Pakistan that was built to check smugglers and Pakistan's separatist militants. 5, 436-mile wall in West Bank, Israel, is meant to check terror attacks on Israel. 6, the 6-mile wall between Spain and Morocco was intended to stop illegal migrants from crossing into the Spain. There are many, but these are a few examples. Whereas it is appreciated that these walls were built for reasons aforementioned, they have negatively impacted on the rights of the affected populations. Some have been deprived of their right to property such as land. A case in point is the Palestinian conflict, which dates back to 1948, officially created by the United Nations. It is highly probable that this conflict will pertain for long as the core issues of the conflict are not amicably resolved by all stakeholders. Furthermore, the right to freedom of association is greatly infringed upon, whereof communities are isolated from each other. This is not healthy for this world where globalization has taken center stage. It also contradicts our cherished ideals of democracy and good governance. In a nutshell, the topic of this conference, A World Without Walls, Opportunities for Peace Building in a Time of Global Insecurity, is a very important issue in the present age of global insecurity. And I hope that we will share insights on how global security, peace, and coexistence can be achieved. I look forward to deliberations that will lead to practical recommendations on how we can make the world a better place without walls, while maximizing opportunities for peace building in a time of global insecurity. Thank you for the attention.